In this video, I'll show you how I built a complete legal AI system for law firms. This comprehensive AI system will automate a ton of tasks for both small and medium-sized law firms for things like summarizing legal documents, analyzing contracts, drafting up internal memos, and even setting up deadline reminders for open complaints. It's basically an all-in-one assistant that can analyze any company document and automate the entire legal process. And make sure to stay until the end, and I'll show you how you can build this from scratch, either for yourself if you work in law, or for your clients if you want to sell this to small and medium-sized law firms. Now, let's dive right in and show you exactly how this AI system works. So you can think of this as 3 separate AI agents, and on the left-hand side here, we have the main AI agent. So this will basically be the central hub that has all the company documents and information. It'll be able to draft out internal memos as well as other work products that you need for the law firm. Now, moving on, we first have a document summary workflow, and this just occurs every single time you get a new complaint or other type of legal document inside your inbox. This AI agent will automatically save this to your Google Drive and then take out all the necessary text and analyze it for you. Then below this, we have contract review, which just like the name suggests, it's going to review all the contracts that you get inside your law firm, and then it'll let you know all the things to look out for. Now, let's go ahead and test out this workflow. So what I've done here is first send over a complaint to the company email. As you can see in this attachment, this will be a complaint between Acme and Zephyr, again, 2 fictitious companies. Now, this is a pretty standard breach of contract complaint. As you can see, we see the parties, jurisdiction and venue, as well as factual allegations. Next, what we want to do over into n8n is assume we just got that email. So now if we go ahead and test out this document summary workflow, it should first get that email that we just got, and then it'll save this document, untitled document.pdf, directly to our Google Drive. This way we'll always have a receipt on the complaint. Then once we get all the text, this OpenAI message model node will actually analyze the document for us, so we don't have to read through potentially tens or hundreds of pages. So after that's done, we can see first we have a result in Google Sheets and then an output in Gmail. So let's first look through our Gmail inbox. And this is what the AI agent just sent over 0 minutes ago, called Complaint Acme versus Zephyr Breach of Contract. So what they've done is created a 200-word AI summary of the attached filing, plus key issues below. So here we have the summary, which is a super quick recap on everything that's included inside the document. Then we have all the key issues included inside the complaint. So here we can see a breach of contract, non-compliance, failure to cure defects, dispute over the deposit, as well as the jurisdiction and venue. And then finally, it'll let us know that the file is saved to Google Drive. And then here inside our Google Sheets, we have all this information laid out. So we have the date, we have the subject, all 5 of the issues, the deadline, as well as a full summary of the complaint. And the best part about this, again, is that it's fully automated. So every time someone sends you a complaint, either your client forwards you over a document or you get another complaint from a third party, it'll automatically trigger this workflow and then save all this information to Google Drive. This is basically a legal assistant that's just working 24/7 for you. Now, let's go ahead and pretend like we want to analyze a contract. So what I've done here is just upload a file into our contracts folder inside Google Drive. So now if we test this workflow, this should automatically trigger. We'll go ahead and download the file directly to n8n, and then once again, have an AI model read through the file, analyze it for us, so we don't actually have to dive too deep into the details. It'll send all the information first to Google Sheets, and then next we'll have a Gmail summary as well. So this is what our email looks like: service agreement review summary. We see the AI model team has reviewed the service agreement between Alpha Legal Services and Beta Corp. And if you haven't guessed, the names obviously are, again, fictitious companies, but we have a summary of the contract. We also have the clause breakdown, so we can see the termination clause, indemnity clause, confidentiality, force, governing law, and then limitations of liabilities, which again are all super important within a contract. And then the best thing here is that first, they'll actually tell you where this is found. So you don't have to dig through like hundreds of different reports and pages to find where they're exactly listing out all of these clauses. And then finally, they will literally paste out the text for you. It couldn't be easier for anyone working inside this law firm. And then as a final kind of like cherry on top, they'll tell us if the risk is high, low, or medium. As we can see here, all of these are pretty low or medium risk. The medium ones are the indemnity clauses, as well as the limitation of liability clause. And then once again, just like before, what we want to do is have all this information saved into Google Sheets. This way, not only you, but the AI agent node that's kind of like in the main hub will be able to read through all this information as well and answer questions for you. So first, we basically have what is considered the email subject line, as well as the analysis, which is literally just copied and pasted directly from that email summary you just got. But now let me go ahead and show you the real magic of this entire AI system. So as you saw on the right hand side, we basically have an automated document analyzer and summary agent. We also have a contract review agent. But what this main AI agent here does is have access to all this information. So you basically have kind of like a super genius at your will every single day that can answer questions on any of your hundreds or potentially thousands of documents. So at a high level, this agent will basically be able to see when things are due, be able to give you super quick questions on the fly, as well as like, hey, what's the indemnity clause of this specific contract on like 2 weeks ago, and then from all of this you'll get an instant answer immediately. So let's just test this out, even though we only have a puny one example here. Obviously this is all fake. It's gonna be a little bit hard to draft up 1,000 fake contracts and then 1,000 fake complaints, but just to show you how this works, let's go ahead and ask a few questions inside the chat. So first we can say what deadlines are due soon, potentially for all the complaints inside our database. And now let's wait for the AI agent. We can see there's an upcoming deadline on June 29th for the case Acme versus Zephyr. And this is regarding, again, the breach of contract. Then if we want to know more, we can say what are the key issues here for the Acme and Zephyr complaint. If we scroll down, let's wait for the agent to kind of do its magic and think. And then here we can see the key issues: breach of contract, non-compliance, yada yada. You've already seen these 100 times over. Then it asks you if you want a detailed memo on these issues, and we can literally say like, please draft an internal memo for the Acme versus Zephyr complaint. And then inside our inbox, we get a bit more of a detailed internal memo here. We have the statement of facts, issues presented, a legal analysis on what to do, and then finally recommendations. So it's telling us to proceed with litigation, prepare to argue material breach and failure to cure, assess settlement opportunities, and then monitor deadlines for pleadings and discovery. And then again, this agent also has information to contracts as well. You can literally say something like, I forgot something about the agreement contract. Are there any indemnity clauses? It'll be able to read through our Google Sheets and then give us an answer quite literally immediately. If we scroll down, we can say that the services agreement or the services review agreement does have an indemnity clause, and then it'll actually tell us where this indemnity clause is found, and then the actual text, as well as, again, the risk. Now this might seem pretty simple because there's one contract, but this is going to be pretty invaluable once you're actually working with a law firm and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of different contracts that you can like immediately just analyze. Before we continue, if you do want this template, as well as full in-depth guides on building AI agents, either for yourself or for businesses, make sure to click the link in the description for my AI community. Now, let's get to the fun part and start building. So what we're going to do here is use n8n, which if you're unfamiliar with, I'm sure you are by now if you've been watching my videos, but it's a no-code automation platform that allows you to build workflows completely without writing a single line of code. So just feel free to follow my lead here, as we'll be visually building each step along the way for this AI system. Now, to make this a bit more organized, what we're first going to do is build out this document summary, and then below this we'll build out the contract analyzer. And then once these two are fully fleshed out and working, we can then connect the two technically to the AI agent or main AI agent node, which kind of like acts as the hub, like I mentioned earlier. So let's just first start with this document summary. What we want this to do is essentially read through our Gmail inbox every single day, every single minute, to see if we get any new contracts, either from clients or third parties. So as the first step, we will set the trigger, which is what starts this workflow, to be through Gmail. So just type in Gmail, select this, and then we want this to be on message received. And then super simple, if you've never used this, just go ahead and create a new credential, sign in with your Gmail account that you want this to read through. But in my case, I'm using our test company email. But again, if you're working with a law firm, you want to obviously connect this to the main email address or multiple email addresses that all receive potential client work in the form of complaints or even documents. So now below this, we have the mode, which is how often you want it to scan your inbox to see when you get a new PDF that you can reference. For our case here, we want this to be every single minute so that we don't miss anything. Now, obviously, we want the event to be message received. And then below this, we want to add a few filters. Now let's go ahead and first click unsimplify. This just gives us a bit more freedom. So what we first want to do is add in a filter. Now, obviously, we don't want to get every single email. That would just be a clustered mess. So what we want to do is click search, and then feel free to copy this exactly if you want. But what I did is just first, right, it has an attachment. Now, this is obviously important because your complaints typically will come in the form of a PDF or similar. So it'll first have an attachment, and then we want the words complaint or contract or filing. Now you can set this to be whatever you want, but this should essentially cover the bulk of what you would potentially see as an inbound email to a law firm. So we'll keep that to be that. And then for the option, we want to be able to download the attachments. What this does again is let us get all the information from the email first, and then it'll actually download the PDF so that we can first send it over to our Google Drive to have as a receipt. And then finally, we want to download the information to what we're using n8n so that they'll be able to analyze the document for us. Now let's click fetch test event, and then it'll get the last email that satisfies this criteria. So if you go to JSON, we can see that the text was the one I sent earlier in the video that says, please see attached for the complaint. And then it was just that complaint between Zephyr, I believe, and that other company that I really should remember by now since we did that example like 3 times. But let's continue on here. Let's drag this trigger down below and then add in the next step of our workflow, which is to save this document that we just downloaded to Google Drive. Again, this is just to make sure that we have a receipt. We can't just rely on AI for everything. And if we ever need to back check it or even just look at the source document, this is where we would go to. So first type in Google Drive. And then what we want to do is upload a file. Again, connect your Google Drive account if this is your first time. But scrolling down, what we first want to do is select the input data field name, and this will typically be attachment 0. And let me show you how I got this. If we head back over into the first step, we can see that the very first item is called attachment 0. Now, the reason for this is because by default, n8n will always label the very first attachment as attachment 0 if you don't do anything to change the setting. So to be able to actually download that attachment, we always want to set this to begin at attachment 0 as the input data field name. The caveat here is that we don't actually want this to be called attachment 0. This is how they label it in n8n, but we want the name to obviously be related to the content or even what the email subject is. So what we can do here is just go over to schema, and then rather than just having this be a default name for the file, because once we go into Google Drive, if we ever need to reference this, we need to know what this is talking about and be able to locate the file. So if you scroll down, you can set this or anchor this to be any of the information or fields. But what I like to do is just set this to be based on the email subject. So let me just find that real quick. Great. So we have the subject here. If we drag this in, so rather than the file being called attachment 0, it will now be called subject Acme Zephyr complaint. This way, again, we'll be able to actually locate the file if there's ever any issues. And then now we want to select the folder we want to upload the file to. So select your drive, obviously, or any other drive if you're using another one, but for the parent folder, just select the folder that you want this to live in. Make sure to label it properly. So what I have one is called complaints and contracts. And then this way, whenever you want to ever go back to this complaint, you'll go into this complaints and contracts folder to find this document. Then now test this step, and this should automatically upload to our Google Drive. And just to show you that it's actually being uploaded, this is my drive, complaints and contracts, and we have the file here. It's called subject Acme Zephyr complaint. Double click into it. This is the file that I showed in the beginning of the video. Now, what we'll want to do is actually download the file into our n8n workflow so we'll be able to work with it. So as the next step, you would pretty self-intuitively, once again, select Google Drive and then download the file. And then this part is super important. You don't want to just download a random file, obviously. So do by ID and then drag over the specific ID. This is all from the last step because this is the input. So all we want to do is take in the ID from the last step. And this way, if we test the step, we should now have the Acme Zephyr complaint subject file here. Now, this is just the file. What we want to do is extract the text from the file. This is pretty much useless to an AI model unless it can actually read it. So add in another step here and then just simply type in extract from file. And then what we want to do is extract from a PDF. But again, if you're working with another data format, if you want to tweak this a bit, you can also extract from XML, JSON, HTML, even CSV if you're working with Excel files. But now this is super simple. Test this step, and then inside this right side under text, this is all the text of the file. So we have the plaintiff, defendant, as well as other information for the Acme and Zephyr case. And then now that we have all the text, we can finally feed this to an AI model that uses its intelligence to analyze this for us. So add in a final node, and then we can just select advanced AI. You can do AI agents if you want to use a different AI model, but I typically only use OpenAI's AI models. So I select OpenAI and then message a model. Now I'm sure you're tired of the spiel, but if this is your first time, again, create a new credential and then head over to openai.com and get your API keys. Load your account with like a couple dollars and it should be good to go. But if not, just connect to your already existing account and even easier. So now select the model. What we want to do here is GPT 4.1 mini. This is the perfect blend of power, but also simplicity. You don't want to do something like O3 or O4 for a simple task like this, unless again, you're dealing with pretty complex analyses. But for our case, I find that 4.1 or 4.1 mini will work just fine. Plus it's cheaper, literally like fractions of a cent. Then what we want to do is add in instructions for the AI model. So I'm clicking into expression just to open this up. You can create your own prompt, but feel free to copy mine too. All this says is that you're a senior legal analyst. Your job is to take legal documents and provide a thoughtful summary. Keyword thoughtful. The input will be a single string containing all the text extracted from a PDF attachment. And then all we're doing here is just literally dragging over the text from the PDF. So from the extract from file, if we scroll down, we have this text. Boop, just like that. And then we also have the date received. All this is saying is today's date formatted as year, month, day. And then now the task for the AI model is to read through the legal document text. And then from the text, we want to extract and fill out these fields. And these will be the fields that you should map to your Google Sheets, which I'll show you in a little bit. But first we want the date received because we obviously want to be able to calculate when the deadline is. Then we have the summary of the complaint, concise 200-word summary, key issues with risk points identified, as well as a deadline. And again, we want to calculate this deadline based on first, the filing date, as well as second, the jurisdiction. And then we have the email subject. This will be used for sending out an email to the team, which I showed in the beginning of the video, but super brief, less than 10 words. And then finally, what we want to do is combine the summary and key issues into one single email that we'll send to our internal team. And we just want to make sure this is formatted in HTML for proper bold and line breaks. And then below this, I just gave an example, and that's because AI models work best when you do give an example with your prompt. So what I've said is, team, I've generated a 200-word AI summary. Please review and incorporate as needed. And then finally, for the output, we only want them to return a JSON object. And this is so it's easier for us to take all these data fields and drag and drop either for emails or Google Sheets. So first, what we have is the date received, summary, key issues, the deadline, email subject, and then finally summary email. And then as a last step, if we scroll down, you just want to make sure that you output this content as JSON. This will force the AI model to produce an output that has JSON data points. So it's easier again for you to reference either for Gmail or for your Google Sheets workbook. So now let's test this step and see what this AI model comes back to us with. Awesome. So now, like I mentioned, we have a JSON output all neatly formatted. First JSON is date received. Then we have the summary, and I know you're tired of this, but this is a complaint filed by Acme and Zephyr. If we scroll down, we have the key issues. So key issue, all the way down, yada, yada. We have the deadline. This is calculated based on first the jurisdiction, U.S. District Court of the Northern District of California, as well as the date issued or received. And this is how we get to the deadline of June 28th. Which later on we can have the AI agent remind us or the team that we need to actually file and do something. But below this, we then have the email subject. And then finally, we have the summary email. Team, I've generated a 200-word AI summary, blah, blah, blah. We've seen this 100 times over and everything looks perfect. Now, all we need to do is take the JSON outputs from here and then first distribute it to an email summary and then next to our Google Sheets. So let's do this one at a time. We can first make a Google Sheets and then we'll just select append row and sheet, which just means add a row in a sheet. Just like before, add a credential if you've never used it. If you have, then I'm sure you don't need me to explain that. Append row, and then you'll just select your Excel sheet or Google sheet. I will select legal summaries since this is our Google sheet. This is what our legal summaries look like. And then finally, you just super important, you need to make sure that the columns match up. So we have a column for date, subject, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, issue 5. The deadline, and then the full summary as well. This just all ties into what we have here as the output. So obviously we have the summary, date received, key issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, deadline, email subject. And if you want to add more things to your prompt, make sure to also add them to your Google Sheet just as a column, just so you have all this information saved neatly inside your workbook. And let me just delete this. So we're starting off on a blank. So now double clicking back into Google Sheets, what we want to do is select our sheet 1 inside legal summaries, wait for them to map out the columns. Date goes to date, super simple. Subject, this will be our email subject. And again, I have these columns set to date first and then subject and then whatever else. If you don't even want to include subject, that's totally fine. This is all up to your preference, but I found that this works best for an organization. Next, we have key issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this might be a little confusing, but the way n8n works, like I showed you in the attachment, is that the numbering actually starts at 0. So this would technically be issue 0 because it's a 0, and then issue 1, which is a 1, 2 to 2. But if you're wondering why the numbers don't match up, that's because they start every numbering at 0. So this is technically issue 1, but they're just calling it 0. And that's why it ends at issue 4. And then finally, let's drag over the deadline and then the full summary. So I believe if we scroll back up, it's right here. Great. And then now if we test out the step, head back into Google Sheets. For our legal summaries, let's now wait for this to populate. Perfect. So May 29th, we have the subject. Breach of contract, complaint, Acme versus Zephyr, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issues, deadlines, and then the full summary. Awesome, all of that works. And then finally, let's just add in one final node, which is for Gmail. So type in Gmail. And then what we want to do is send a message. And then for the 2, this will be manual since you want this to be based on whichever legal team email you have for your company or your client that you're working with. I'll do my throwaway company email. And then for the subject, just simply drag in the email subject to email subject. And then for the message, summary email to the message, and then test out the step. And then this is what the email looks like. Email subject to subject. And then this is the email summary. Perfect. And then if you want to get rid of this little section here, it's a little bit annoying. It says this email was sent automatically with n8n. All you would do here is add in an option, append n8n attribution, and then turn this off. Neatly format this, and then we're basically done with this document summary here. Now let's move on to our second workflow, which will be our contract review and analysis. And this will actually be very similar to what we just did in this first section here. So I'll fly through this a little bit faster. Now, the first thing that will be different here is rather than a Gmail trigger. So this Gmail trigger is because we're waiting on other people or clients to send us documents. But in our case, when we want to review a contract, we're the ones setting the action. This is more dependent on us letting the agent know what to review rather than having someone else send something over to us. If that's confusing, let me just show you. So rather than doing a Gmail trigger, what we want to do is set this to be a Google Drive trigger. So type in Google Drive, and then we want this trigger to be on changes involving a specific folder. So inside your same Google Drive account, what you want to do is select the folder you want this workflow to be based out of. I have one called document extract. And then what we want to watch for here is whenever a file is created inside this folder. So inside my document extract Google Drive folder, I have one file called sample contract that I uploaded this morning. It should still register if we test out this workflow. But just to show you how this works, if we were to test this out, let's wait for this to load. We can see that the latest file here has the name samplecontract.pdf. So all this trigger is doing is looking for our Google Drive folder here. So again, this document extract folder, You can name this to be whatever you want. And then it's just going to watch over this every single minute so that whenever we feed a new file inside this folder, then it'll start this workflow. So all this means is that if we want to analyze a contract, we'll first upload the contract into our Google Drive folder, and then this workflow will automatically trigger and it'll automatically analyze the contract for us. So again, we're the ones that upload the contract to Google Drive, but once we do, everything else will be fully automated. This way, it'll only analyze the contracts that you yourself set. So next, after this node, just like before, what we want to do is download the file. So select Google Drive once again, and then we want to download the file. What we want to download, so you're aware, is a sample contract, which is our services agreement. So now double clicking into this, what we want to do is select the file by ID, and then first find the file ID from the left-hand side. Great, so we have it here. Simply drag this in, and then if we test out this step, we should have the sample contract inside our n8n workflow. And then just like up above, what we want to do is extract from file. We want to take out all the text, so select extract from a PDF. Now, if we test the step, it should take our sample contract, and then if we scroll down a little bit, we have all the text right here. And this is where we can feed it to an AI agent. So add in a node. Again, if you want to use other AI models, select the AI agent. But for me, I'll do OpenAI, and then I'll do message a model. And then same exact thing, I'll do 4.1 mini as the model, since this isn't too intensive of a task. And then what I have for the prompt here, if I open this up, feel free to copy and paste this exactly, saying that you're a legal clause extractor. Here's a single string containing text extracted from a contract. And then we're dragging over the text right here. You're a senior legal analyst. Given the full text of a contract and its metadata, we want them to write an internal email summary to the reviews. And then for the JSON output, we want them to first give us a subject that we can use inside an email, and then the body for the email as well. So if you scroll down, we have things we want to include in the body. So first we want a greeting, and then we want a summary of the contract. And then finally, we want the clause breakdown. So if it's missing, we'll say no clause found, but we want to just give a 1 to 2 second paraphrase of the clause and then flag its risk of low, medium, or high. And these are all the different types of clauses, which you can add or adjust to your own liking. But we have termination, indemnity, confidentiality, force, governing, and then limitation of liability. And then finally, we have the closing statement. Scrolling down, we also want to output contents as JSON, and let's test out the step. So here we can see all we get is a subject for our email as well as the body for our email. Just like before, we'll want to connect this first to Google Sheets and then next to our Gmail account. So again, type in Google Sheets. We will do append a row in a sheet, just like before. Find our file. This time it'll be contract analysis, sheet 1. And then all I have in this Google Sheet is the contract, which is technically the email subject, and then the analysis, which is technically the body. So if I were to delete both of these, head back into n8n, we can paste this in, subject to contract, body to analysis, test this step, and then our contract analysis should automatically populate with this information. So perfect, we have the service agreement review summary and then the analysis. And then finally, what we want to do is add in one final node for Gmail, send an email. And then for the two, you'll want to hard code this in to whichever internal team you want to send this to. And then super simple, subject to subject. And as you guessed, body to message. Let's test out the step just to make sure it works. And then again, you want to make sure you test out every single step so you're not like spinning your wheels. And after you've done this for like 20 minutes, you realize that something has gone terribly wrong. So heading back into Gmail, we have the services agreement review summary, and we have team reviewed between alpha and beta, the summary, and then finally the clause breakdown. Now that we have these two sub workflows done, what we want to do is, just like I showed in the beginning of the video, have one main hub that's able to reference information from both our legal documents and complaints, as well as all the contracts that we uploaded ourselves. So let's add in one final trigger. So here we'll do add another trigger, and then what we want this to be is chat message. Now you can also set this to be Telegram or Slack, most likely if you're using this in a team setting, but just for demonstrative purposes, since this is a YouTube video, I'll just do the built-in chat feature here. It's all the same thing. If you want to do, again, Telegram, swap this out for Telegram. If you want to do Slack, swap this out for Slack. But what we want to do is connect an AI agent node that will act as our central hub. Next, what we'll want to do is add in a custom prompt. So select system message here, and then Let's delete this, open up the expression, and you can paste my prompt in exactly. All I'm saying is that you're a law firm AI assistant with 3 tools. The first is document summaries, and this is a Google Sheets tool to read all of our document summaries. So again, this is everything that we've essentially summarized day by day inside this automated workflow. It's able to review and read all those documents. Next, their second tool is going to be a contract analysis, which is the same thing, a Google Sheets tool to read through all the contracts that we've uploaded inside this workflow. And then finally, our last tool is a Gmail sender. So it sends an email and returns success confirmation. We'll use this to create internal memos based on the information and documents we have. And just like before, we want to make sure this is formatted properly. Next, we want rules so they know when to use what specific tool. So if the user's question is about a document's content or issues, we'll use the document summaries tool. If the question is about contract clauses or risks, we'll use the contract analysis tool. And then if the user wants to draft an email or send a memo, we'll use the Gmail sender tool. And then finally, if we want to actually make that internal memo, we'll have sections for the statement of facts, issues presented, a legal analysis, and then recommendations. Now, let's go ahead and connect some intelligence to this AI agent. So if we select this plus here, what we want to do is choose OpenAI, and we'll do 4.1 mini. Next, we can add in some memory if you want to. This just makes sure that it remembers the prior conversations. This is great for like follow-up questions. If you first ask, what are the clauses or indemnity clauses of this services agreement? They'll give you the answer, and then you say, okay, what about this one then? And then it'll remember that you're still talking about that same services agreement contract. That's all this simple memory does. And then finally, we'll just attach the 2 or 3 tools that we listed inside the prompt. So the first is the Google Sheets. All we want to do is get rows. Now this is based on the document of legal summaries and then sheet 1. So if we exit out, all this is doing is reading the Google Sheets from here. So inside our document summary, again, this is all automated. Whenever we get an email satisfying the criteria of a contract with an attachment, it'll run this through, upload the file to Google Drive, and then all this information will be saved inside our Google Sheets, which is right here. So this is the Acme versus Zephyr. And then what we're doing is having this main AI agent right here have access to be able to read everything inside the sheet. So they're able to see the date, when the deadline is, and then all the issues, just like I showcased in the beginning example. That's all this is doing. And then we can rename this to be document summary. Next, let's do the same exact thing, but for contract analysis. So add in Google Sheets once again, but this time we'll want to select our contract analysis Google Sheet. So select this, super simple. We will do sheet 1, exit out, and then all this does is read all the contracts that we've uploaded, because again, every time we upload a contract to Google Drive, the OpenAI message model node will automatically create a summary for us, first with an email, and then inside this Google Sheets, which is right here. And all we're doing is giving this main AI agent the ability to read through all this information. So we'll rename this to be contract analysis. And then let's finally add in the node for Gmail. We'll do Gmail, and then we can select send an email. Now, before we can set the subject as well as the message, what we need to do is test this out. So let's just open up the chat, and just to see if this works, we'll say what complaints have deadline soon. We can see the AI agent is working. It's going to read through a document summary, and we have the answer. There's a complaint titled breach of contract between Acme and Zephyr. Perfect. So then now inside this AI agent, we should have all this information. And then finally, what we can do is let the model define both the subject as well as the message. And then once we run through this AI agent once again, it'll be able to use our Gmail tool to send out the internal memo. So let's wait for this to have a green check. Perfect. And then now if we head back over into Gmail, we have our internal memo for Acme versus Zephyr, the statement of facts, issues, legal analysis, and recommendations. Now this concludes our all-in-one legal assistant that you can sell to both small and medium-sized law firms. And now obviously this is kind of just like the beginnings of what you can truly accomplish with the system. You'd want this to be tailored for the specific law firm that you are working for and their systems that are integrated with them. They'll be able to utilize an intelligent AI agent that's able to read through all their complaints, all their contracts, and actually do actions and help automate tasks that you would typically see some analysts do within firms. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe for more AI agent content for actual real world use cases. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you want to join an active AI community all about building AI agents, then make sure to click the link in the description.